Hi friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of March. It is finally April. Spring is coming. I'm very happy about that. It's been a pretty good reading month. We've definitely had some highs and some lows, kind of a mix here, but I read a pretty decent number of books and got to a lot of things that I had for review, so we're going to go through all of it. Some of these books I did talk about in my mid-month wrap-up. So for those books, I'm just going to tell you the title and the star rating, and if you want to hear my detailed thoughts about those books, I will link my mid-month wrap-up up above, and you can go check that out. If you are new to my end-of-month wrap-up, the way that these work is I start with my reading stats. As a stats nerd, I enjoy this piece of it. If you're not interested, you're more than welcome to skip forward to where I start actually reviewing the books. Then I will go from lowest rated books to highest rated books. Let's dive into the stats. In March, I read 34 books for a total of 10,845 pages, which is an average page count of 350 a day. So this is pretty good, a little bit higher than what it's been the last couple of months, but I think part of it is I've read some graphic novels and manga this month and novellas, so we're doing pretty good there. 23 of the books I read were advanced reader copies or books I had for review, so a lot of them. I had 4 rereads, 4 of them were graphic novels or manga, 2 of them were indie published, and 2 of them were translated from other languages into English. In terms of format, audiobooks are typically my highest, which is the case here, but otherwise we're pretty well split. This month I listened to 21 audiobooks. I also read 7 physical books and 6 ebooks, so like a lot across different categories. Taking a closer look at those audiobooks this month, 11 of them were what I call shelf, which means I had a physical copy on my TBR shelf and I got it off through audio or primarily through audio. 3 of them were from Audible. 4 of them were from my library, 9 of them were audio review copies from NetGalley, and 5 of them were from Libro FM, including some audio influencer copies. I say this every month, but I do love Libro FM. They're a great alternative if you like to listen to audiobooks and you want to support local indie bookstores, and you also own the rights to audiobooks that you buy and you can put them on different platforms. So there's a link down below if you want to go check them out. Every month they give me access to a few audiobooks in exchange for mentioning them, so I think they're great. And I also subscribe to them myself. In terms of age demographics, 24 of the books that I read were targeted at an adult audience. 6 of them were YA and 4 of them were middle grade. Looking at publication date, the earliest published work I read this month was from 1929, and in total I read 9 books that were published prior to 2024, so these are my backlist titles. I read 2 2024 releases and 23 2025 releases. Mostly front list, partly because I was really trying to get to a lot of stuff I had for review. Then looking at author demographics, I really value reading diversely, and so I set some benchmarks for myself to keep track and make sure that I'm hitting them. Every month my goal is to read at least 25% from openly queer authors and around 50% from Black, Indigenous, and person of color authors, and this month we did great. 41% of the books that I read were from authors who are openly members of the LGBTQ+ community, and 50% of the books that I read were by Black, Indigenous, or person of color authors, so love to see that. In terms of genre, this is fairly typical for me. My most read genre was fantasy. Big shocker, I know. 13 of the books that I read were fantasy. I also read 8 romances. This includes 3 contemporary romances, 2 historical romances, and 3 speculative romances. Speculative is going to be your sci-fi, fantasy, and paranormal romance. I also read 3 horror novels, 2 sci-fi, 2 contemporary fiction, 2 memoirs, 1 erotica, 1 nonfiction, 1 historical fiction, and 1 literary fiction. Looking at star ratings, this month is fairly par for the course. The lowest rated book that I had was 2 stars. I typically don't give out a lot of super low ratings. I often will just not finish books that I'm really not liking because I like to enjoy my reading for the most part. But I gave 1 book 2 stars. 1 book got 2.5 stars, 3 books got 3 stars, 3 books got 3.5 stars, 10 books got 4 stars, this was my most given rating, which is pretty typical for me, 6 books got 4.5 stars, 8 books got 5 stars, and 2 books got 6 stars, and in my personal rating scale, a 6-star read is a favorite of the year, so I had 2 of those this month, which is great. My average rating was a 4.2, which is on the high end. Next, let's take a look at how I am doing with my yearly reading challenges. I like to set these for myself, and we've made a little bit of progress. So far, I have read 3 out of the 6 books on my Classics TBR, 4 out of the 5 books on my nonfiction TBR, and 4 out of the 11 books on my sci-fi fantasy TBR. Not too shabby going into April. Lastly, progress on the Read What You Own challenge. I continue to not be great with audiobooks, but I'm making some progress with the physical books, so let's take a look. Currently, my owned audiobook TBR is 235, which is up 4 from the beginning of the year. My ebook TBR is 63, which is down 1 from the beginning of the year, and my physical TBR is 434, which is down 19 from the beginning of the year, which is pretty great. So feeling good about that and hoping I can kind of keep it up. The physical is the thing that I'm focusing the most on because it takes up actual space in my home. So those are my stats. Let's go ahead and dive into all of the books that I read in the month of March. We will start with my lowest rated book, and I am kind of bummed about this. And honestly, I didn't give it a rating on Goodreads. I reviewed it, but because it doesn't come out until May, and because I think I'm mutuals with the author on TikTok, I was like, ooh, I felt kind of bad. But unfortunately, this book was a little disappointing. It started strong and then ended up being kind of a miss for me. That is Angie Kills a King by Evan Lakem. This is a debut fantasy novel set in kind of a dystopian fantasy world, and at the beginning I was really interested in it. It's got an interesting premise. We've got a heroine who, for reasons of her own, has killed a king and is on the run and gets captured by a renowned bounty hunter who is aging. And they have kind of an entertaining, bantery relationship with each other, but then it turns into sort of this like road trip adventure, super plot-driven book. So one of the issues for me was I did feel like this was very plot and world building heavy and was a little lackluster in terms of the characters. I wanted more emotional depth and growth from the characters, and I don't feel we really got that. Our main character does change by the end of the book, but it's a bit of a leap, and I don't think we really see how she got there. It just kind of happens, and there are other characters as well who do things at the end of the book that doesn't feel in character for who we know them to be, which I found a little bit frustrating, and things were tied up a little too neatly for me in the ending. The other thing about this is there's a lot of stuff that happens, but I felt like the main character didn't always have a ton of agency. A lot of things were happening to her, and it wasn't always really clear why. So again, it feels like something that has potential, but is not quite where I'd like to see it be. And, you know, for a book that has 2 female main characters, I just didn't feel like either of them were really fully fleshed out in the way that I would like to see them be. So it was disappointing. There were things here to like. It wasn't a terrible book, and probably if I wasn't reading so much for character development, maybe I would have rated it a little bit higher, but for me this was a little bit disappointing and I ended up giving it 2 stars. So that was a bummer. This month I gave one book 2.5 stars, and I talked about it in my mid-month wrap-up. That book is Chaos King by Kaysen Callender, so if you want to hear my thoughts on that, you can go check out that video. This month I gave 3 books 3 stars, and I've not talked about any of them yet. The first one is Evilish by Kennedy Terrell. This I had for review from NetGalley. It is a YA graphic novel that has a really fun premise, and I like the art style, I like the story. It just wasn't enough, if that makes sense. I just wanted more from it. It felt like the start of something really good, but I needed more for it to feel like a fully realized story. So this follows a non-binary teen who dreams of joining this evil gang that isn't like truly all that evil, and through a course of accidents ends up as part of that gang, and things don't go quite the way that they expected. I don't want to spoil it because it's a graphic novel and it's pretty quick. Again, I think it's cool. It's fun characters. It's a fun world. I think parts of it are really entertaining. I like the art style. I just wanted more from the story. So it felt very middle of the road for me. 3 stars, enjoyable, but not quite what I might have hoped. I also gave 3 stars to Private Rights by Julia Armfield. I don't know how I feel about this book. I ended up landing on 3 stars because I was like, middle of the road feels maybe right for this. This is literary fiction with some light climate fiction horror. And it is a retelling of King Lear, following three queer women who are the daughters of an abusive father who has recently died, and they are coping with life and coping with that as best they can in this futuristic England that is quite literally sinking and raining all the time. And it's this kind of like weird, dreamlike narrative. And the ending is weird and not in a way that I necessarily found fully satisfying. I don't know. I have a hard time knowing how to feel about this because there were times that it really hit for me. There were moments in the book where I was like, okay, yeah, I really like the emotional impact of this character moment, or the commentary is really interesting, or the plot is interesting, or there's like something creepy happening. And then there was a lot of it where I was like, I'm kind of bored. Should I DNF this? I don't know. This was one of those books where like several times through the course of reading it, I thought about DNFing it, but it kept my interest enough to keep going, and I finished it. And then the ending was just kind of like, huh, okay. I don't know. 3 stars. It was interesting. I know people really are mixed on her other book, Our Wives Under the Sea. I have not read it. Like, the actual writing is pretty good. I don't know. If you've read this and you have thoughts, let me know. In certain ways, my thoughts are similar on the final book that I gave 3 stars to. It's not at all the same in terms of genre, but some of my issues with it are kind of similar, and that's The Otherwhere Post by Emily J. Taylor. This was another book where I was like, when it was good, it was very good. And other times it was kind of boring. I feel like it was trying to do too much. It was cool. Like, the world is really interesting. It's like a magical version of Victorian England, but where scriptomancy is a form of magic that can deliver letters and open portals to other worlds. And our main character is the daughter of this notorious scriptomancer criminal, and she's been in hiding, and she gets a letter telling her that her father was innocent, and she wants to go investigate it, and gets herself into a lot of trouble along the way trying to figure out if it's true that her father was not responsible for this like horrific act of terror basically that happened. And there is a romance plot. There's times that we're in kind of school type situation, and other times we're on the run. It was a little scattered and all over the place for me sometimes. Again, really cool concept, and when it was good, it was really good. I liked the characters pretty well. The romance, I think, was pretty good. The magic system was cool. I liked it fairly well, but I think what kept me from really loving it was that there were parts of it that were kind of boring, and a lot of moments where I was like, wait, what are we doing now? Like, okay, now this. And it's part of a series, so I feel like it didn't need to have so much in the first book necessarily. I don't know. 3 stars. That's where I landed. Moving on, let's take a look at my 3.5 star reads. This month there were 3 of them, and one of them I talked about in my mid-month wrap-up. That book is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas, so you can go hear more about that in that video. Also, we recently did a live show for this where we also talk about the Throne of Glass series as a whole, so if you want to go check that video out, I can link it up above. I also gave 3.5 stars to A Benny in the Kingdom of Gold by Pete Jelly Clark. I had an audio review copy of this from NetGalley. It is the 2nd book in his middle grade fantasy series that is African inspired, following the same character in kind of a new adventure. I loved the first book. I would love to see more people read it because I think it's fantastic. This book was good, but I think I went in with really high expectations, and it, for me, wasn't quite as good, quite as engaging as the first book. It is still a solid story and is doing some really important things thematically. It didn't go the direction I expected it to go, but it's possible that the 3rd book is kind of going to do that. This is in some ways a timely book because it is dealing with fascist systems of governance and people who are too afraid to say anything, and what revolution requires. So yeah, I liked it. I think it's a really good book, and it, you know, the more I think about it, maybe like a 4. I don't know. It's kind of on the edge for me. I did like it. It was just slightly disappointing because I think I was just expecting to love it in the way that I did the first book. it is the middle book in a series. I will continue on with the series. I love P. Djeli Clark's work. But yeah, 3.5 stars, so that's coming out soon, which is fun. Speaking of sequels that I didn't like as much as the first book, is my other 3.5 star read. Both of these were books where I'm like, these are perfectly good books. I'm just a little disappointed because I loved the first one. And that is Go Luck Yourself by Sarah Rosh. This is the second book in the Royals and Romance series. They're really fun queer romances that aren't taking themselves too seriously. In this book, we have the younger brother of the Crown Prince of Christmas, who was one of the main characters of the first book, who has enemies to lovers relationship with the Prince of St. Patrick's Day. So it's kind of silly at times. I think this one didn't work quite as well for me because I feel like they don't treat each other super well for part of the book, and then parts of it felt a little rushed. Like, it was still fun. I still enjoyed it. I think it has an interesting plot. I'll continue on with the series, but it didn't like quite hit the tropes that I really enjoy and the kinds of relationship dynamics I prefer in my romances in the way that the first book did. But the setup is pretty fun. It's entertaining. It's still a pretty good time, 3.5 stars. Moving on, let's look at my 4-star reads this month. Oh wow, I talked about a lot of these in my mid-month wrap-up. This month there were 10 of them, and 7 of them I talked about in my mid-month wrap-up. Those books are A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf, Buffalo Hunter Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones, Cabin Fever by Jack Harbin, Octavia E. Butler H is for Horse by Chi Ming Yang, Swim Team by Johnny Christmas, The Fall Risk by Abby Jimenez, and The Warbler by Sarah Beth Durst. If you want to hear my thoughts on any of those books, you can go check out my mid-month wrap-up. I also gave 4 stars to Exquisite Ruin by Adrienne May. This is their adult debut. It is a dark romantasy that's got kind of an enemies to lovers dynamic and truly enemies. It also has BDSM elements in that dynamic, and on top of that, the way the magic system works for the heroine is that she uses pain to harness magic. So heads up for that. That may not be something everyone wants to read because it gets a little intense at times. But she is sort of a witch. She wakes up with amnesia and can't remember anything, and she is stuck in a labyrinth with this demon that she has a history with, and they have to work together to get through this deadly labyrinth. And then it has quite the twist at the end of the book. So I really liked it. This author writes YA under A.M. Strickland, and I've really loved their work there. And I think this is a really strong debut. I will say it's a little long and does feel a tad repetitive at times, which is why this ended up being a 4-star instead of a 5-star for me. And also I feel like some of the BDSM elements were like not totally to my taste, but I feel like that's also a personal thing, not like a book thing. So yeah, overall I liked it. My next 4-star read was Royal Bride Demand by Laquette. This was fun. I had this for review from NetGalley. It's a Harlequin category romance. These are very trope heavy, short romances that just sort of like scratch an itch, wanting a light, fluffy, kind of fun romance, and I really enjoyed this one. It's sort of a take on a second chance romance that worked pretty well for me. It's a second chance marriage of convenience. So the hero and heroine had been together, but because of her baggage with her parents, she has major fear of commitment, and he unexpectedly had proposed to her when she wasn't expecting it in front of people, and when she said no, he took it extremely personally and like ghosted her, cut off all contact. So now, 2 years later, what she doesn't know is that he is the prince of this island nation, because of course he is. She thinks he's just like a diplomat, but nope, he's their crown prince, and he needs to take over, but he has to be married by the time he's a certain age. And so he knows that she would make the perfect queen that would get him confirmed as king, and he, without telling her the situation, basically blackmails her into marrying him, kind of. So she agrees to this 2-year marriage of convenience where then they would have a no-fault divorce. But then of course she finds out that he's a prince and he's been keeping this from her. He has all of this fear and these walls built up between them and wants nothing to do with her because she like broke his heart and was terrible. But he's never actually listened to her, and she doesn't have a personality to put up with bullshit from anybody, which I kind of love. And there's still this really intense chemistry between the two of them. And they're like, well, maybe we can do like a no strings attached situation, but that is clearly not actually gonna work. I found this really satisfying. Like, he needs to get his head out of the sand, but he does, and she doesn't put up with it. It is very steamy, especially for how short it is, but I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I would recommend. My final 4-star read this month was The Summer I Ate the Rich by Micah and Maritza Mulite. This comes out in April, and I'm gonna say it's not the book that I was expecting, but it is a good book. So it's pitched as this kind of zombie horror where we have a teen girl who is secretly a zombie, but it's also drawing on the Haitian mythology of the zombie. I think that's the word for it, and kind of merging the two together, which is interesting. But it's pitched as like YA horror, where she's quite literally eating the rich in this situation. Is this horror? Barely. Like, you know, it could have gone a lot harder with the horror elements. Like, yeah, is there a little bit of a cannibalism element? Sort of, but it's not like particularly gruesome. It doesn't spend a lot of time focusing on the horror elements. It mostly reads like a YA contemporary coming of age story about a girl who is a Haitian immigrant living in Florida, and her mom is struggling financially to keep it together. She gets this internship opportunity. She makes some like bad decisions, falls for a rich boy. There's a lot of commentary on the treatment of immigrants, on wealth and class inequalities, and also integrates kind of interesting Haitian mythology into it. So it's a good book, but like, you know, I feel like it's pitched as being much more intense on the horror end than it is. This might be great for some of you, though, who are like, I can't do serious horror. If you want just like a sprinkling of horror, this might be for you, but I did like it. 4 stars. Next is my 4.5-star reads. This month there were 5 that I'm going to talk about, and 2 of them I talked about in my mid-month wrap-up. Those books are Paper Doll by Dylan Mulvaney and The In-Between Bookstore by Edward Underhill. If you want to hear more thoughts on either of those, you can go check out my mid-month wrap-up. I also gave 4.5 stars to Sweet Obsession by Katie Robert. This is the latest book in the Dark Olympus series. I am deep into this series now, so I'm not going to get into too much detail because there's a lot of political macro plot happening. The macro plot is coming together. This is the book where I feel like we're getting all the sort of chess pieces set in place for the final 2 books, and I am so excited for it. I cannot wait. I really liked the romance in this one as well. Okay, the whole series is this like lightly speculative take on Greek mythology with queer romances, polyamorous romances. This one is between Poseidon and Icarus, and I was a little hesitant about how it was going to do. I shouldn't have been, because Katie Robert, like, she almost always makes this work for me. But this is a romance with a dynamic where Icarus has been taken prisoner by Poseidon because of his betrayal of the city and whatever, and they fall in love along the way. There is also a power play dynamic, but here's why I think it worked for me, is because Icarus is the dominant one and the one doing the seducing. I think that's why it works, because I was like, power dynamics, how are we going to make this work? But because it flipped that, for me it worked. It was good. I liked the romance in this. I liked the macro plot. I thought it was a really good installment. Satisfying conclusion as well. This is one where we actually get an epilogue with the characters, which I have been begging for in a lot of this series, and so it was very satisfying. 4.5 stars. I liked it. I had an audio review copy from NetGalley. I also gave 4.5 stars to Yona of the Dawn, volume 17. This is an ongoing political fantasy romance manga series that I quite like, and we've got kind of a new arc happening here. The dragons, if you know, you know, getting ill, which is interesting. We've got some consideration of the impact of war on regular people. It was good. Not my favorite in the series, but I liked it. 4.5 stars. And my final 4.5-star read was The Unworthy by Augustina Bazterrica. This was great. I have not read Tender as the Flesh. Maybe I should because I loved it. This was translated from the original Spanish, I believe. And it is a dystopian kind of post-apocalyptic horror novel with a lot of religious culty elements to it, which are totally my vibe. It is kind of intense though. Like this one is horror. So it's like may not be for everyone, but it is set in a dystopian future where the environment, everything has kind of collapsed. And we're following a young woman who, in order to survive, has joined this super creepy cult. They have this man that they never see who is kind of the head of the cult, and everybody else is women, and their goal is to be selected as one of the different kinds of chosen, many of whom have physical disfigurement happen to them. It's gruesome. I won't get into the details, but yeah, it's like a very abusive cult environment. And yet the book, I think, even though it's grim, is surprisingly hopeful, because I think part of it is about how even in super dark, awful circumstances, love, queer love can blossom and there can be hope even in the middle of really dire circumstances. I thought the writing was gorgeous. I loved it. 4.5 stars. I would definitely pick up something else from this author. I thought it was really good. Next is my 5-star reads. This month there were 7 of them that I'm talking about, and 3 of them I talked about in my mid-month wrap-up. Those books are Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor, Survivor by Octavia Butler, and The River Has Grits by Amal El-Mohtar. If you want to hear more about any of those, you can go check out my mid-month wrap-up. I also gave 5 stars to A Gentleman's Gentleman by TJ Alexander. I really enjoyed this. This is TJ Alexander's first historical romance novel, and for me it really worked. I do love a historical romance. TJ Alexander is a trans non-binary author, and I've read a couple of their contemporary novels and they're really good, and so I got reached out to see if I would be interested in reviewing this from the publisher, and it sounded great and I quite liked it. It is a slow burn romance between a trans hero who is a lord hiding the fact that he is taking on the identity of his brother who had passed away, and his valet, kind of a personal servant who he hires because he needs to be married and he needs to go find a bride in London, even though he's not actually interested in women. It's great. Like, it's another one where I was like, okay, employee-employer relationship. This could be tricky in terms of power dynamics, but I think it really worked because it is such a slow burn, and the specifics of how it resolves, for me, it really worked. I loved it. Again, very slow, historical, not super steamy romance, a lot of like longing, I feel. Yeah, I like this one a lot. Really good. I also gave 5 stars to a reread. Really, this is 6 stars. I read an arc of it at the very end of last year, even though it came out this year, and it was one of my favorites of the year. So I might put it on my favorites list of romances again this year, just to like get it out there more. But this is Tropical Rebel Gets the Duke by Adriana Herrera. I love this so much, and I reread it for my in-person romance book club. This time I listened to the audiobook. It's great. This is the final book in her historical romance trilogy, set in late 1800s Paris, following 3 Afro-Latine friends who find love. And in this case, we have a Spitfire lady doctor who works far too hard, but is doing really important work because she runs underground women's clinics in late 1800s Paris, providing important services such as abortions, among other things. And she just can't slow down, and she finds love with this Black Duke who just wants to like take care of her and give her a break. And it is very steamy, and I loved it. I feel like this is exactly what I needed for this year in a romance. Huge fan, highly recommend the whole series, but yeah, this was great. I also gave 5 stars to Brighter Than Scale, Swifter Than Flame by Neon Yang. This is a novella from an author I love that's really fun, and it was excellent. The premise of this is it's like The Mandalorian if The Mandalorian was a queer, disabled lady dragon slayer in an Asian-inspired fantasy world. It's great. It's so great, especially if you ever wonder what's behind the mask, and what if the girl king of an opposing country can get her to finally take off the mask and armor and unveil who she truly is. It's so good. There's like a twist that wasn't shocking. I feel like you kind of see it coming, but I felt like this was wonderful and so satisfying, beautifully written. It was great. 5 stars. Highly recommend. I had an e-arc and this comes out, I think, in May, if I'm not mistaken. My final 5-star read was kind of a pleasant surprise. This is We Could Be Magic by Marissa Meyer. It's a YA graphic novel coming out this summer that I loved. I will admit, I have a lot of affection in my heart for Disneyland from growing up and as an adult, and so that's probably part of why this worked for me. I just thought this was so cute and so hopeful. So it follows a plus-size Black teen girl who has always dreamed of working at this theme park that is not Disneyland. For copyright reasons, but she's always dreamed of working at this theme park and portraying one of the princesses. And she has finally gotten the opportunity to do a summer program working at the park, and she has to try out for roles, and she does not get what she wants because fat phobia is a real thing. But she's also a little dismayed to find that a lot of her coworkers are not as enthusiastic about the magic that they can give to guests, and she gets a little bit jaded. But also she still really cares about this, and maybe there's a way for her dreams to come true. And also maybe she falls in love. And it is so charming and so hopeful and has fantastic plus-size representation, and I just loved it. I gave it 5 stars. This was great. I think people will probably really enjoy it. Lastly, I had 2 books this month that got 6 stars, which is a favorite of the year. I have not talked about either of them yet, and they are so good. One of them I'm not shocked I gave 6 stars to, and the other one was a surprise. So we'll end with that one. The first one that I gave 6 stars to is Blood Over Brighthaven by ML Wang. This was our Patreon book club pick this month, and oh my god, this was so good. Also, it made such a good book club book. Normally we're like, okay, we'll talk about the book for like 30 minutes and then chit chat about other things. We talked about this for like an hour. We had so much to say about it. It was a great option for book club. So this is dark academia fantasy, and it follows a young woman who is going to be the first woman to pass the test to be a high mage in this world. But then it goes in an unexpected direction because this book is dealing with colonization. It is dealing with intersectionality and the way that women of the majority group in a society can both be oppressed and also be complicit in the oppression of others. It has the perfect ending, in my opinion. I won't say more about this, but this was so good, so perfectly written, at least for me. Also, I love her writing. This is the second book that has been one of my favorites of the year, and there's just something about the quality of her writing that I just inhale. It goes so easily. I love the way she writes characters. I love the nuance. I love the way that she isn't afraid to go places that other authors won't, and yeah. Easily one of the best books I've read so far this year. It's incredible. I loved it. The other book that I'm giving 6 stars is a bit of a surprise because it's a genre I don't often reach for. The reason I picked it up is every year Book of the Month has a Book of the Year winner, and you can get for free either the Book of the Year or one of the other finalists. So I picked this as my free one because it was the one that sounded the most interesting to me of the options, and I'm so glad that I did because it's historical fiction, but it's incredible. This is The Lion Women of Tehran by Marjan Kamali. Y'all, this was amazing. It is a story about female friendship and the Iranian Revolution, and it's amazing. So it starts in 1950s Tehran, following these 2 girls who are 7 at the time who form an unlikely friendship. They're from very different social classes, and it follows their relationship over time. One of them is an activist for women's rights and really involved in that, and one of them is less so, and things get very complicated. And so this is dealing with female friendship. It's dealing with political activism and revolution and what it takes to make change. And it's like, it made me so emotional at the end. Like, I teared up, which I don't do in a lot of books. I think this is incredible. It goes all the way up to just a few years ago is the very end of the book. And you know, the fact that women now, more than half a century later, are still fighting for rights in Iran. God, it's like, is rough, but this was so beautifully written, so good. Highly recommend. Yeah, I'm really glad I picked it up. So there you go. Those are all of the books that I read in the month of March. Overall, I feel like it was a pretty good month of reading. There were definitely some highs and lows and some mids, some things that didn't fully work out for me, but I found some new favorites. I read a lot of great books and I'm pretty happy with how that went. So talk to me in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on anything I talked about in this video. If you reached this far in the video, drop a lion emoji down below. I think those exist or something along those lines. And for your question of the day, let me know about a book you read recently that was not your typical genre that you ended up loving. Lion Women of Tehran was definitely that for me. It was such an unexpected hit. I loved it. Talk to me in the comments down below. Let me know any of your thoughts. If you like this video, it always helps if you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.